Welcome to another Untitled interview edition of the Untitled Film Project Podcast. On this episode, we're joined by actors and writers of the new heartfelt comedy, The Ballad of Wallis Island, Tom Basden and Tim Key. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. Cannot express how thrilled I am to be joined with you guys.
Oh, thank you.
It's a real pleasure to be here.
I think we've all kind of had that thought and that fantasy of maybe what a private concert would be like with our favorite artist or whatever, which I think immediately connects with the audience on this. What is your kind of journey into that story? I mean, the writers and all, how did this kind of form to actually become a film?
Well, I think what would be good is if the answer was that, we'd seen a specific situation like this and then been inspired to write a movie. But I don't think it was that, was it?
No, I don't think it was exactly that. I mean, I think I remember sort of stories about, seeing stories about, Sting being hired by sort of a billionaire to play for his birthday and stuff like that. So I think we were aware that these things happened, that, obscenely rich people can get someone to play their daughter's Sweet 16 or something, and feeling like that's quite a funny atmosphere to just put a musician, particularly a musician who takes themselves very seriously and doesn't think of themselves as a sellout, being thrown into this very wealthy person's orbit and having to kind of, make nice with them to get paid. So I think we felt like there was a lot of comic potential in that setup, and particularly when you have a sort of slightly grumpy, slightly kind of abrasive musician who doesn't really want to be there, just wants the money.
I think the ingredients of the film are all bad, really. It should be you should be watching two very unlikable people.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the challenge in the writing. There's just a guy who's got money, can just do what he likes, sort of play God. That's not very attractive to see. And then a singer-songwriter who sells out as a mercenary. That's not very pleasant either. So yeah, it's a bad start. Anyway, it took a lot of writing to sort of work to make the two characters also. Well, to make my character the millionaire for a start, you have to somehow make him sort of redeemable. Plus, he's also really annoying. So there's issues with there's a lot of bad issues with the movie.
But you guys didn't play it that obviously a stereotype, of course, of course you think, oh, that's a whim and he's a marionette or whatever for your character. But you play it. Let me rephrase it. There's a lot of grace when you're meeting a hero, right, or when there's an artist you've looked up to for a while, and they kind of. Maybe they're a little bit abrasive or what, but you kind of forgive some of that. And so I never found your character detestable and I definitely never found your character to be over the top ridiculous.
Yeah. I think certainly what we were aware of, certainly when we were kind of writing the first act of the film, is that the characters do really need somewhere to go. And that for my character, he's very guarded, he's very private, and he's very prickly, particularly around Charles. And so when Nell turns up, he suddenly becomes a very different person, and you see this kind of person who's smiling and positive and having fun, and enjoying spending time with Charles. So we kind of felt like we were confident that even if you thought the characters were sort of hard to like at first, we were confident that we'd kind of get there. I personally love the character of Charles. I think he's I never find him annoying. I just think he's completely lovable and charming. And just so, he just puts it all out there. There's nothing withheld about him. And I think audiences kind of warm to that very quickly.
But I think, though, to that point, though, this is an interesting turn that it could have been. Obviously, you wanted it to be a comedy. That's kind of what I'm hearing, obviously, from the beginning. But there's also it could be a stalker situation if you wrote it a certain way. Yeah. Also, is for playing your character, was there any kind of element to that where you kind of wanted to touch on that, but not?
You know that it's available, and that I don't think we lean into it at all. I think it's how you shoot it, really. I think if there's a scene where he moves out of shot and it stays on my character and my character's looking at it, then you're sending the audience in that direction.
But then it's funny, isn't it? Because something being funny and something being scary, actually, it's very
it's a fine line.
It is a fine line. Really. So when I kind of come out of the shower and he's waiting for me, and
it's a great example.
I think that's the moment I'm thinking of. If that instead is just if the camera's on me and it's just I'm waiting, I think that's different. It's just weirdly, when he comes out, you find us both immediately in the same shot. He's coming out of the bathroom, you realise I've been waiting and still talking. And then you realise, okay, maybe the guy's not under threat physically, but mentally he's going to have a difficult few days.
Because you even mentioned in one scene talking on the payphone, which I love as a 47-year-old guy, I remember the payphone. But you mentioned I'm in misery.
Yeah.
And, and Kathy Bates, like, it's kind of the tip that I'm going to be in handcuffs, I think is what your line was. Yeah. So there is, you acknowledge it. And I think that was smart.
We acknowledge that this is the setup for a horror film.
Yeah.
We, for some reason, haven't made a horror film. It's not our style.
Was there any outtakes at all on that you guys maybe would use in like a bonus feature, something like that just really, maybe not like a gag reel, because I'm sure there's plenty of that, but just maybe going a different way, playing with that, like I'm looking through the glass and I'm not going to break.
It's a good question, actually. I think
there definitely is. There definitely will be stuff that Griff has got, the director, where I think editorially he would have just been like, we would never. It's a need to know basis.
Right.
We'd have removed all the bits that are really creepy.
It's funny, isn't it? Because there's those sort of the things online where someone's recut a trailer for The Shining and made it look like a romantic comedy.
Yes.
And I think you probably could do that quite easily with this film.
I think so.
Go through the rushes and recut it to make it look really appalling.
Yeah. But then once the film opens up a little bit, you see other characters, and then particularly when Nell and Michael arrive, then it stops being quite so threatening in those terms. It then turns into something where it's some relationships are starting to reveal.
That's what's so interesting, is that when Nell and Michael arrive, they just love it there, and they love Charles and think he's wonderful, and so there's this feeling of like, for the audience, of sort of realizing that the way that Herb reacted, he didn't have to be that way.
Different people can have different perspectives on the same situation. Did you know it?
I did, actually.
Well,
which I think to some degree goes against maybe a stereotype, right? Of like, okay, well, now you're inviting a female artist onto a lonely island or whatever, but your character is actually the one that's like, what is all this? And she's like, hey, this is great.
Yeah.
That's what Carey Mulligan, the great Carey Mulligan, brings to the film, is her energy, and as soon as she arrives, just changes the whole movie for me. Where, I mean, I'll happily watch me and him on screen for a bit. I'll hold my hands up. 20 minutes in, you're pretty much done with us. It's time to bring in the cavalry. And when Carey comes in, she brings that warmth and brings that, sort of unlocks all of the relationships. Within 5-10 minutes, everything is in a different realm.
The opening song, before we hear a line of dialogue, really sets the tone for the film, which obviously was on purpose. But it feels like it was plucked straight off of a vinyl record from the 70s or 80s, right? It just feels great.
Okay.
So what was the process of writing that and getting to the point where you're feeling like this is the right one? Because I'm sure as an artist, you feel like, oh, there's all these kind of stop and goes and all, but to settle on it.
Well, what I was going for when I wrote it was...
I don't mind that. I mean, with the placement of the songs and the songs that we used at certain points in the film, I kind of had ideas for them, and I'd sort of send them to Tim and Griff, our director, and at that point these are just demos, I've done on my computer, and just saying like, maybe this for the opening and maybe this for the end, hoping that they'd sort of go, yeah, fantastic, brilliant.
He wanted more feedback than we
I definitely wanted more feedback.
I would just attach a heart to his message. It could go at my dad. But it was heartfelt. I didn't mean it.
Was it sarcastic heart?
No, I work with a designer. I write books, and I send her stuff, and she just gives me exactly what I need. She doesn't, there's no editorialness. She just says, yeah, fab. And I think I now see how I'm doing exactly the same to him. Here's send a bit of music, I'll listen to it. I love it. I think that'd be so nice in the film, and just go, yeah, perfect, love that. But there's no more than that. It's
funny though, because obviously, as you say, it's quite an important part. Particularly the opening and the ending. And, it was something that they were, I'm very lucky that they just trusted me to do, and trusted me to just sort of follow my nose with it and think about what would be a good tonal fit musically at various points in the film. And not, for example, just, email Marcus Mumford and say, can you just do this, mate?
Well, our relationship with Marcus came slightly too late.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
The entire film takes place on an island or on a beach or in a house or in a shop. Basically the entire film. So how efficient was the filmmaking process, knowing that you don't have to worry about extras and background artists and just the containment of it.
I think weirdly, I've never heard other people who've made a film talk about it in this way, but we genuinely, I think that is a factor when we were writing the film. I think we like the idea that it feels really achievable. And I think some of our touchstones, some of our favourite movies are quite small. Like we both love Nuts in May, Mike Leigh's film, which has probably, 2 characters and then another 2 sort of clatter in a little bit later on. And even things like With Nail and I, where they're quite self-contained, they're in a small little world where it all plays out. And I feel like, that was not accidental, I don't think. We like the idea of all getting in a van, going to some remote coastal area and just shooting a movie with as little complications as possible.
I think also we really did write the film. Well, first we wrote it during lockdown. So there was that sense that we don't know what shooting a film will be like, from now on. So we should probably just aim for something that feels very intimate and small.
The world had ended.
It was that,
unfortunately.
And then I think also, what was going through our heads with that was like, we were so committed to making it that we were thinking about the version that, that cost very, very like micro budget version of the film. So we'd write it and go, actually, we really could do that for peanuts, and obviously if we get the chance to make it with a bit more time and money, that would be preferable. But we were so committed to making the film by hook or by crook, we wanted to write a script that was achievable no matter what the budget was.
But ultimately, we did shoot it with a proper professional operation.
We did.
We didn't do it on our iPhones. So.
But we still shot it in 18 days. It was a very quick shoot.
Yeah.
And as you say, like just really kind of getting the most out of those locations and brilliant crew and particularly Magni, our DP, who is absolutely there to serve the performers. Just like give us the time and space. We were never waiting for anything on set. It's like we've got time to do it because everything's so tight.
But there were certain things too that were timed with nature, right? So obviously there's timing involved in any shoot, but you had a sunset that you were looking at, and you had to basically get that right or come back the next day, I would assume.
Well, the final thing we shot was the gig at the end, and that was that's literally running. That's people running with cameras and people running with final bits of set, and then I remember like running back up and then yelling for Tom to just come from makeup onto the set, or probably from costume onto the set. But it wasn't the case of it would be good to start shooting soon. I think we probably had 90 seconds before we had.
It's also, I don't know if you remember, there's a specific shot in the film where the sun is setting over the hills.
That's the one.
And it was like that was the only time we could shoot this. Yeah. We could shoot this gig. Something.
You don't want to see Tom.
I was in costume.
Yeah, you don't want to see Tom over the side of the hill, just sort of eating a yogurt. And go, I'll be there when I can. They had to run. He ran, sits down, gets the guitar, and then they shoot. And I think they probably got about. We see it in the film. They probably got about 10 seconds of the light, and then it's not in that scene again because that was the moment we needed. Yeah. And there wasn't a fallback because we didn't have another day. So that was we had one shot at it. Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. If anybody wins the lottery with the numbers 7, 11, 18, 27, 45, and 48, are you going to demand a cut?
Oh, do you know what? I think that the prize pot will be really diluted now because I think if you've been
our director's
tickets,
our director is obsessed now. I was losing quite a lot of money.
My worry is that we're so disappointed when they do win and they're getting like $10 shared between 3,000 people or something.
Yeah, getting all 6 numbers right and getting $10 is a bit of a body blow.
People all the time when they make movies or directors or when they're writing and whatever the case is, there's always Easter eggs that no one's ever going to know about. There's a ostrich in the corner because their kid loves whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
What are the significance of the lottery numbers? I assume there is some.
See, the short answer is no significance, but I don't actually think that's true. I think there was something happening.
You've got to remember, we made the short film nearly 20 years ago, and so we used the same numbers. So it could, there was some kind of joke at the time.
Do you know the numbers? Give us the numbers.
7, 11, 18, 27, 45, 48.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, they purely could be random. It just seems like that would be the kind of thing you'd be like, oh, that's...
I'm that they are random. I'm going to say that it's like, it's a coded political message and support.
Yes, and
we can go with that.
And we're going to get cancelled and the film will be shut down.
All right. Finally, guys, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for doing this. Every episode on the show, we have over 3 years now, we have a big question where we get people talking about a certain topic, and since I have you both here, and this is a fictitious, a film about a fictitious folk song duo, I wanted to ask you guys each, who would you like to see a biopic of? We've seen Bob Marley recently, Amy Winehouse, et cetera, et cetera. There's plenty of them, obviously. Bob Dylan, of course, right? Who would you like to see a biopic made of that you necessarily haven't seen before?
Well, I don't know anything about this guy, but there might easily have been a biopic made out of him. But I would go with Buddy Holly.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. I don't know what was going on in his life before the unfortunate plane crash. But something spectacular was happening because the amount of music that he made before he died was incredible. So I'm guessing that guy must have been a quite incredible guy. So I'd probably be interested in seeing more about Buddy Holly.
Yeah, I mean, lots of people. I'd love to see a biopic of Nick Drake because I think he had a really interesting life. And Jeff Buckley, I'd like to see that biopic. I think, you know what, I would love to see a Dylan biopic about a period in his life that isn't the bit that people know well. Like, you know, around the time when he sort of just finds God and is making like Planet Waves and stuff, and he's kind of, you know, he's just at such a different stage in his career. I'm much more interested in failure than success, personally. So, like, I would much rather see people who are kind of struggling to sort of maintain some kind of like profile. Or
He's obsessed by me.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, I mean, but to be honest, I think I you know, Inside Llewyn Davis is one of my favourite films, and I think I maybe prefer fictional musicians to real ones on film.
All right, I lied. One more. The process of making this movie, does it affect how you see other movies now? Like, obviously, you're no stranger to making movies. I'm just saying, like, to be so intently involved in this one, you go to the theater, are you still able to enjoy it? Turn that part off.
I would say that, like, I think we both do comedy as well, and I think those sort of Bounded Brothers things where even if you don't enjoy someone's comedy, you are sort of thinking, yeah, that's difficult what you're doing.
Okay.
You've been on a lot of night buses where you've been, like, in tears, where you've just died on stage.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a slight element now with a movie where you watch it, and rather than slag it off immediately, you go, well, fair play, they made it. Because it's not easy to make a movie, to like get everything together and to get greenlit and make it. So particularly a small movie, you know, an independent movie, I sort of am quite sort of, you know, my settings is to enjoy that movie, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think anything that's not relying on you know, big stunt sequences and explosions and sort of, you know, huge name actors. I feel like it's magic. I take my hat off because it's so hard. It's so hard to do it and then get an audience to you know, to get in the cinema and see it. So I just think, you know, this is the time to really support all of those filmmakers who are trying to do something different.
Yeah, and everyone should support the Ballad of Wallace Island. It's amazing. Go see it in theaters. It's incredible. Actors and writers, Tom, Basden, Tim Key. Thank you guys so much for doing this. Really, really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for listening to the Untitled Film Project Podcast. To support the show, please rate, review, follow, and subscribe. Original music by Jeremy Schwartz. Special thanks to the Music City Film Critics Association. Editing and post-production by Jeremy K. Gover. Voiceover by Chad Bennett.